Hello, I am using our handy dandy ChatGPT to help me keep on task with giving instructions on how a closing will go. Now, this is perfect for brand new agents who are having their first buyer transaction close and also listing transaction close too. But this is so that way you look like a pro when you go into the title company for closing. You know what to expect, what's not normal, and what your role really will be. So the big thing to know is that this is for after you've done your final walkthrough, after you've done all of your transaction itself. This is the actual day of closing where your client is becoming the legal homeowner and you're getting paid for the first time. One of the biggest things to know though is you're going to have this set up beforehand. So typically about a week before closing is when I confirm the signing time that my buyer wants at the title company. And another big thing to know is that buyers and sellers do not sign together. So your job is to basically be there to reiterate everything the escrow officer says, wave the red flag if there's something that's not normal, and to make sure that this is a positive and exciting experience. So when you get there, don't be late. If your clients are married, they both will need to be in attendance. That's mainly because we are a community property state in Texas. So even if one is not on the loan, they still are likely going to need to sign the deed because we are a community property state. The only time that wouldn't be the case is if it was like an investment property. The escrow officer will be the one that's mainly doing everything. They are the ones ensuring all the paperwork is signed properly and done correctly. They're also the ones responsible for going over the specifics that your buyer is signing. Your buyers will need to have their IDs with them. Those are going to be photocopied as soon as they arrive, and your clients should have their wire transferred already to the title company before they arrive at the title company. Now, this really isn't your responsibility, but it is a thing that you want to check and make sure it's been done. The lender is responsible to actually get your client those final numbers of how much they need to wire over to the title company, as well as the title company and the lender will have worked together behind the scenes before the closing to work on your closing disclosure. The title company will have sent it to you a day or two in advance as well for you to go through and make sure that everything is correct regarding the sales price, any amendments, any credits that were negotiated in the contract, different things to make sure that it is correct. There's nothing more embarrassing than getting there and realizing there's an error on the closing disclosure that you could have potentially foreseen and had corrected prior to closing. This most often comes up if the title company or the lender did not receive an amendment to the contract whenever you were in the inspection period. So you always want to make sure that they're getting copies of things like amendments or anything that changes after the initial contract. So your clients have their wire transfer, you guys have arrived at the title company, and your clients have had their IDs photocopied. Now you're going to sit down at the table with the escrow officer, who's ultimately going to take the lead at this point. They're going to go over all the important documents on their end, as well as the important documents that the lender has provided. Big thing to remember is that if they don't sign, they don't get the house. So unfortunately, these are not negotiable items. These are sign it or don't get it. As of now, after 12 years in the business and over 660 homes sold, I have not had that happen. I've had some issues where we've found a discrepancy or an error and we've needed to pause, get it corrected, and then keep moving forward. But I haven't had anybody just decide to change their mind at the closing table. So hopefully that doesn't happen to you. In the documents that they're signing, your buyers will be required to use a blue pen. The title company will provide it. I have had a number of times where the buyer wants to use a special pen that has sentimental value. If it is black, it's a no-go. It has to do with making sure they're original copies. The escrow officer is going to make sure going through all the important documents, but the biggest ones are going to be the closing disclosure because that breaks down all the debits and all the credits of the transaction and is how they come up with the final figure of how much money the buyer needs to have wired straight to the title company. Most escrow officers are very good at going through these documents and explaining them in normal English language. And a lot of them are CYAs. A lot of them are ones that are literally just to cover someone's butt because someone got sued. There are multiple documents related to COVID saying that your client hasn't lost their job due to COVID. There's at least 2 or 3 that are related to loan fraud and your client attesting that they didn't commit loan fraud. There are also disclosures that are title company specific, basically saying that you understand the title company didn't go and inspect the house on your behalf and that you agree to work with the title company or the lender if something got missed for some reason. Just a lot of CYAs. But the closing disclosure is one of the big ones because that goes over the actual numbers. In Texas, we have 2 additional documents that actually are kind of adjacent to the closing disclosure, which is the Alta statement and the Texas disclosure. All 3 of those will look different in formatting, but they all have the same walkaway number. We used to do all of it in one document called the HUD-1. If you have a buyer that hasn't purchased a home in many, many years, they may say that these forms look different, and that's because they would have been used to a HUD-1 form versus the CD, aka closing disclosure. With all of these forms, you're just kind of there reiterating, making them feel comfortable. I recommend trying to allow the escrow officer to take the lead as much as possible because they are the one that's going to be explaining these forms. Your job as the agent is just to hang out, make sure that they feel good about what they're doing, they feel comfortable. Also, you're another set of eyes to make sure that something doesn't get missed. Some forms will require dates, some will not, and so just making sure that everything gets signed just as a way to ensure you're paying attention and to keep your clients from having to come back in and re-sign anything. Over the years, I've developed a couple kind of cute terms or jokes I will tell during the transaction, during the signing. For example, there's a form that is about loan fraud, and it says basically if you commit loan fraud, it could be a fine up to $10,000 and a jail time of 2 to 99 years. So I normally tell them that's my 3 hots and a cot, basically jail joke. Or when they get to the actual deed, which makes them the owner once it's officially signed by the seller or the buyer and it's recorded with the county, I let them know that that one is a standardized form because we're an escrow state. Basically, attorneys are just plugging in names and legal addresses, but the verbiage is all the same. But essentially what it says is you don't pay, you don't stay. That's a good term for it. I have not had anybody have to or want to physically go through and read every single page of it. Normally they feel comfortable enough with the escrow officer going through the documents that that's not going to be required, which is why it does take about 30 to 60 minutes, depending on how fast your client's signing, how long their name is, and how many questions they have. Your clients may ask you when they get keys. So the way that it works is once the buyers have signed, the sellers have signed, doesn't have to be in that order, but when both sets have signed, the title company has received their blessing from the lender, so the lender's been able to review everything that's been signed, has arrived at the title company, and the buyer's money has arrived at the title company. Then the title company will tell us we are officially funded. Now that's the magical word. The lender telling you that it is funded does not mean it's closed. It is the title company that is ultimately the one that has the say and that is the one that officially deems it a closed transaction. The buyers have access to the keys via you as soon as it is officially funded. This typically is a couple hours after that last person signs. So my normal process is asking the listing agent before the final walkthrough if I can take the key from the Supra lockbox at the final walkthrough to hold until funding. 99% of the time, the listing agent will say that's absolutely fine, and so we'll be able to take the key, and I keep that in my possession until we are officially closed and funded. Even if there is a temporary leaseback agreement, the seller still has to give the buyer a pair of keys, a set of keys. That is because they're now legally a landlord. So I go ahead and still take the key and still give it to them just as normal. I just remind them that because of the leaseback, they don't have the right to go to the house yet. But once the leaseback is over, then they'll be able to use that key. Personally, I actually have little wedding ring boxes and I put the key inside the little wedding ring box. It is a really fun way to present them that key, makes it a little bit more memorable and special. If you're interested in potentially buying some of those, I have bought a few hundred of them in bulk, so I do have some for sale. Often the title company will ask if your client would like to take a photo, a closing photo, right after finishing signing. This is great for your marketing and a great way to capture that memory. I often will have it, we'll take it on my phone a lot of the time, and then I'll text it to them, or sometimes the escrow officer will take the buyer's phone and take a picture of all of you and then send it to you. With the closing gift, this is also normally when I give them the closing gift after they've finished signing before we part ways. And they will also get a copy of all of the documents that they signed from the title company. They'll either give them an option of printed out copies and they'll have them in like a pretty little folder, or they will send them a secure web link to get access to those documents. At the closing, they will receive a payment letter, basically showing how their payment will be broken down in year one. They will also be reminded by you and by the title company about the importance of filing for their homestead exemption. I personally have set up 2 email drips to remind them a couple times post-closing, but it's important to talk about the benefits of a homestead exemption at this time to remind them that it's something that they need to do. Hopefully this was helpful and this will make you look like a pro when you go into your first closing.